right side, to the 10, to the 5, touchdown! 6, going to the hoop, puts it up, puts it in! A fantastic play.
Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another installment of the Magnolia Fields podcast. I'm Shannon Marlar, as always, alongside Cody Blaszczak. And Cody, it was an exciting week 2, to say the least.
I think week 1 was exciting.
Week
it just got better.
And it just only went up from there. We're going to just off the rip today, some quick knee-jerk reactions to some week 2 scores. Starting off, Starkville and West Point. Oh, my goodness. West Point starting 0-2 on the season.
When we previewed these teams at the beginning of the year, I think we both kind of thought if any of these teams were going to be 0-2 come this point in the season, it would be Starkville, not West Point. But it's West Point, and it's weird. It just doesn't feel right.
And what's strange about it is my opinion of them has not changed. I still think they could win 5A. I think that they just drew a tough Louisville matchup, and that Starkville team might be better than we think. I said on the show last week, that this is the barometer week for Starkville. Your first game against a real high-level competition, and they came out and put up points, 33-26.
Yeah, and I think with all of those points, I don't think it's the offense that really has impressed me. I think it's the defense. They forced 5 turnovers against West Point. 2 of them were interceptions. 3 were forced fumbles. They recovered all 3 of those fumbles. So when you have 5 turnovers in a game, you're kind of expecting, or not expecting, but you have more opportunities to score, and you should.
Yeah, I think that Starkville's air attack is much stronger than we thought it was going to be. You know, the Starkville tends to reload because it's just such a wealth of talent over there. And I think they've done that, maybe not to the extent of a Burnside, but I think that they've got a good enough wide receiver room and a good enough quarterback under center that they can put up points at this level.
When you lose 2 guys like Burnside and Trey Petty, you expect a team to drop off a little bit just because of the production and who they were and all of that in the past years. But, hey, through 2 games, Starkville has been impressive nonetheless.
Absolutely. And on into another shocker of a score, Oxford and South Panola. I mean, just a brutal ending for Oxford. This game is tied, 34-34. It's late in the fourth quarter, and as you can see there on your screen, a 69-yard pass from South Panola to go ahead late with 45 seconds left in the game. Oxford came back in this one after trailing 19-7 at the half.
Yeah, that 12-point deficit it's a tough thing to overcome in the second half, but what they did manage to do was go up 2 in that third quarter. Going into the fourth quarter, Oxford was on top. It's just sometimes freak things happen at the end of a game, such as that almost 70-yard touchdown pass. But I think what's more impressive is South Panola scored 22 points in the fourth quarter. I mean, they fell behind, were trailing by 2, and then they go and put 22 up to get the win.
Yeah. And Cody, I have a really burning question about this one. Does this say more about Oxford, or does this say more about South Panola?
I think it's kind of an either-or sort of thing. I mean, we've already seen Oxford. We know what that defense is like, and South Panola, 5 of their touchdowns were on the ground. So, obviously, a very strong ground game, and I don't know. Maybe on paper, I think it says more for South Panola, but we've seen Oxford, and I mean, you put that game into overtime, if they don't get that 70-yard touchdown, it could be Oxford's game. It just didn't play out that way.
Absolutely. And I think in terms of Oxford, where do you go from here?
I don't think it's anything to worry about. I mean, you lose on essentially the last play of the game, and it's a long touchdown. I just don't think it's something to stress about. I think it's maybe one of those things you address in practice and are like, we have to play 100% of this game and come through in the very end. And I think that's a one-time thing that happens to them this season.
I agree. On into the kind of last section of our reactions. New Albany, still undefeated on the season. And Cody, you said they should have lost this game to Corinth.
I did. And I say that because not only was it a close game, that score was 19-14. New Albany scored all 19 of their points in the second quarter. Other than that, I mean, they got shut out for 3 individual quarters, the first, third, and fourth. And if you're Corinth, you kind of need to do a little better for that second quarter defense. And really, you've got to score more often.
Oh, yeah. But and here's the thing with this Corinth team, too, is they're now, they got the win over Boonville, and that's over 3A, but you lose to New Albany. And I think right now New Albany arguably has, behind Louisville, some of the best momentum in 4A. I mean, they completely trampled Saltillo. I mean, trampled. I mean, that's the best I've seen a New Albany team play in a while. And then you go out and despite what you think, you only score during the second quarter, but you do play well enough for all 4 to get the win over Corinth, who is again above kind of your weight class in 5A. I think New Albany is cooking up something that really could be interesting in 4A. The only problem is when it comes down to it, they do have to go through Louisville. Yeah,
and you can see they had 233 rushing yards in that game to Saltillo. They only had about 40 against Corinth. Really had to lean on Braden Shettles, who had 127 passing yards. So, I mean, and even altogether, they only had about 170 total yards of offense. So I think against Saltillo, it could kind of just been one of those games where the blood was flowing. I mean, first game of the season, maybe not. We'll see. But, hey, 2-0 is 2-0.
Hey, 2-0 is 2-0. That team is going to go as Braden Shettles goes. On into the last react before we take a quick break here and get into some Week 3 matchups. Shannon and Houston, who arguably had the game of the week this week. I mean, Houston takes that one 7-6. And if you're Shannon, how bad does this one hurt? Because you just came off of trampling a team in Week 1.
Losing by 1 point hurts in any sport.
But when you can't find the end zone?
Yeah, I know. It's just it's a tough way to go out. And the good thing is it's early season. That's my takeaway to some of these games is the one possession losses.
Yeah.
You can learn from that later in the season. I would rather lose a game by 1 now than lose in the playoffs by 1. So, I mean, I think it's more of a learning thing than anything.
Yeah, and I want to clarify, by finding the end zone, I mean finding the end zone again. Shannon obviously did score the touchdown and then missed the PAT, but that's in the first quarter. And then the whole rest of the game, you can't find some way to put points on the board, and that is brutal.
Yeah, I feel like it's a mental thing, too. When you score in the first quarter and then you don't score in the next 3 quarters, I think that kind of is something you just have to get out of your mind when you have your next game. It's been a while since we've scored, but we have to flush this out of our memory. It's a new game. We know we can score and be done with it.
And that leads me into my final one of what to make about this Houston team. We talked about them before the season started as a team that could make a deep run until they meet Louisville in the playoffs. And have we kind of changed our opinion on them? Do we think that they wind up coming up, getting put out in the first round? Do we think they do wind up facing Louisville later? What?
I think regardless, it'll probably end with Louisville.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I still think it's too early in the season. I think you start looking after weeks 3 and 4. I think we can start making those assumptions and those predictions and such. I think they still are a playoff team. It's just kind of like you said. Does their path end with Louisville or early first, second round? Yeah,
and I completely agree. I mean, I just look at their first 2 games, Amory and Columbus, in which they put up a combined 75 points. So this Houston offense can go. They just didn't against Shannon. It's about all the time we've got here for our first segment. Right after this break, Cody, we're going to get into some big Week 3 matchups we've got our eye on. Stick with us here from the Richard Schwartz and Associates Studios in the Magnolia Fields podcast.
If you've been hurt in a car wreck, you know who to call. Call me. Remember, one call, that's all.
Welcome to the Richard Schwartz and Associates Magnolia Fields Studios. One call, that's all.
Back here from the Richard Schwartz and Associates Studios, Tanner Marlar alongside Cody Blaszczak, and we'll get into some big Week 3 matchups. We're going to start off Belmont and Myrtle. I mean, these are two teams that have really kind of came out of nowhere. Belmont obviously 1-0. You expect them to be solid, but that Myrtle offense is humming. They put up 47 points against Pottscampton. The Belmont defense is who I've got my eye on. They shut out Smithville 28-0.
A little battle of some good offense, some good defense. I think what was most impressive to me is Zane Hill, who not only is a quarterback and a DB, but as a DB, he's got better stats. Only two games in, but 2 interceptions compared to 150 total yards on offense and no touchdowns. I mean,
I know.
I enjoy a player like that.
I do too. I think that's a big chance for Myrtle. You know, if they come out of this game 3-0, you've got some serious momentum headed into your non-divisional slate. And these are not teams that Myrtle would have beaten in previous years, so to say. I mean, there have been some good teams come through Myrtle, but 47 points is a lot. You found the end zone a good bit against Pottscampton. Not that Pottscampton is a world beater by any means, but Myrtle's humming. And just look at the comment section. They'll tell you.
And I think Zane Hill is kind of that X factor guy for this Myrtle team, at least at this point in the season. But I've been impressed with Myrtle. I'll say it. I'm kind of on the Myrtle train right now.
I am riding with Myrtle until they give me a reason not to.
Exactly.
And they haven't yet. We'll see when they play Belmont this week. Speaking of the comment section, we'll get into two teams that are definitely have been requested from TikTok, Tishomingo County and Kossuth. Tish County coming into this one 2-0, Kossuth at 0-2. And on paper, you may look at this and think, well, why is this an important game? Because Tish hasn't played anybody. Well, let me just come out and say that. Tish hasn't played anybody. You beat Alcorn Central and a 1A in Strayhorn. If you want your flowers, you got to go beat Kossuth this Friday night.
I will say on paper, strictly on paper, at least through 2 games, we were a little bit off.
We predicted 1-9 on Tish.
Correct.
I thought that Central game was a toss-up. I thought Central was going to be better. They're not. You're 2-0.
On paper, though. On paper. But you get Kossuth this week, which I don't think is going to go your way if you're Tish County.
I'm not sure.
Could, and we'll see. But I feel like this is a Kossuth team, and you've kind of mentioned it. Relatively good opponents weeks 1 and 2. They're searching for a win.
They are hunting for a win. And here's the thing with this game, and I've put out feelers to everybody I know that covers both of these teams, and everybody's telling me Kossuth is the better coached team. Tishomingo County has a lot of momentum because they're 2-0. Kossuth is, again, hunting for that first win. Everybody thinks this is going to be a low-scoring game, and it's going to come down to the war in the trenches. And that's where I think Kossuth has the advantage.
If Tish County wins this, credit where credit is due. But like you mentioned earlier in Alcorn Central and Strayhorn, these are just 2 teams that you beat that are not very good.
No.
Out of 280 teams in Mississippi, according to Max Preps, Alcorn Central is 255, Strayhorn is 268. So it's not like you're playing incredible competition.
No, and for the record, Tish is in that low 200s area.
They were sitting at 206.
Yeah, they're at 206.
And Kossuth, I didn't get their exact number, but I want to say they're in that like 140 to 160 range.
They're in that 140 range.
I mean, you pull it out against Kossuth, credit where credit's due. I'll give it to you.
Credit where it's due. You're still beating a 3A. I mean, and you're a 4A school. Until you get in division, I can't take it. I take it with a grain of salt. Moving on to some other week 3 matchups and to our pick for the 2A state title, Calhoun City. They are 2-0. They've scored 40+ in both games, and they're playing Aberdeen this week. Calhoun's got a chance to go 3-0.
And you mentioned it for one other school. I don't remember who it was just a little while ago. It was Houston. You thought, are they as expected or are they a little worse? Well, I think Calhoun City are they expected or are they a little better? Because
I think they're as expected right now.
They haven't allowed a single point all season long. I know it's only 2 games, but still 2 shutouts.
But that's a team that really took pride in their defense last year and then wound up losing to Union late in the playoffs. So I look at that Calhoun City team, and so far I'm like, this is what we expected, and it's very, very good. In order to really jump off the page to me and say, wow, this Calhoun team might be better than we anticipated, they need to beat someone they're not supposed to.
Didn't they only lose 1 last year?
Correct.
Who was that 1 to? Was it Louisville?
1 was to Union.
It was to
late
Union.
in the season.
That's right. Like we said at the beginning of the year, this is a train that just probably won't be stopped.
I don't know. It's going to be in the playoffs if they are. I'm very excited to see that score this week. Aberdeen, credits to them. Hope they put up a good fight. I got Calhoun City in that one.
I think we both do that. My question is, I'm a fan to see how many, I like streaks of things. How many shutouts in a row can Calhoun City get?
Agreed.
Because you're at 2 right now. Can you get 3 this week?
Can he get 3? Can he get 3? On into Bruce and East Union. Bruce and East Union, these 2 squads. And East Union, I think, is so hot and cold. They either score a bajillion points or none. And granted, that's in 2 weeks. And 2 very different opponents. This one I got my eye on because I think it's a pretty even matchup. I think this could be a good game. Much like Kossuth and Tish, I think this one will be close.
Well, you talk about consistency for East Union. Throughout 2 games, they are 3 of 9 in the air for 33 yards and have 370 rushing yards and 4 touchdowns.
Oh, they're going to run the ball.
Run the ball. Do not throw the ball. There's no need to do it.
No, they're going to run the air out of the ball.
Run the ball, stick to your game, see if you can pull a win out. Bruce, we kind of mentioned it. That's a tough loss. We've had a lot of 1-point losses in the first couple of weeks. And another one is Bruce, South Pontotoc in their season opener, 23-22. It's just tough.
It is. It most definitely is. And I'm trying to see who Bruce played that next week, who Bruce played last week in week 2.
Week 2, they lost to Vardaman.
Yeah, it's Vardaman, solid team.
40-8 was the score.
Solid team in Vardaman. So I think they got a chance to get that first win of the season against East Union. This is a pretty even matchup. I got my eye on it for sure.
I think it'll be a closely contested one.
I do too. That's about it for the games around the state in week 3. We're going to take a quick break so we got a little bit more time to talk about our game of the week because we've got some stories for you on the other side of this break. Stick with us here on the Magnolia Fields podcast from the Richard Schwartz and Associates Studios.
If you've been hurt in a car wreck, you know who to call. Call me. Remember, 1 call, that's all.
Welcome back to the Magnolia Fields Studios, brought to you by Richard Schwartz and Associates. 1 call, that's all.
Back here from the Richard Schwartz and Associates Studios, Tanner Marlar alongside Cody Blaszczak, and it is time, Cody, to get into the game of the week, and I am excited for this rematch. Philly and Choctaw Central. We were at this game last year, Cody, and I think it's some of the most fun I've ever had watching a football game. High school, college, professional, period.
I think it's the most fun 30-plus point game we've ever seen.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
We call it the game of the week. It really might just be the players of the week, because you get two guys, and Keyshawn Ben for Choctaw Central, and then you get another guy in D. Burnside for Philadelphia. And my Lord, were they fun to watch last year.
I don't think I've ever seen so many points put up in a game. You see the score there on your screen. Last year, Philly takes it 70-39. Now, for those that are fans of defense, don't watch. There's not going to be any. At least there wasn't last season. And I'm not sure if that's because there were two players, one on each team, that were just unstoppable, or if no one could just remember how to tackle. Because if you remember, Burnside was not the only player on that Philly team that really surprised us. They had a quarterback whose name I'm forgetting, drew his first start of the season in that game and balled out.
I will say, though, about halftime, maybe midway through the third quarter, you and I, specifically you, were pulling up the Mississippi State single game rushing record, not just for one of these guys, but for both of them, just because of what they were doing.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that record is somewhere in the 550 range. We'll have to find it here in just a second. Actually, if you could get on that, that'd be fantastic. But we were so close to setting it because the Philly run game just could not be stopped. It was big rush after big rush after big rush. And then on the other side, I look at Choctaw Central, and Keyshawn Ben made Philadelphia scared to kick it. They were going for it on fourth down from their own territory because they didn't want to kick it to Keyshawn Ben. They would rather try and stop him in a double team situation or just by bottling him up on the defensive side rather than kicking it to him and giving him so much space. And it is, it's I wish he had more help on this Choctaw Central team, because every time we've seen them, he has been nothing short of electric.
Tanner, I'm surprised you don't know this.
What's that?
A kid by the name of Jaylee Adams, 543 yards. Do you know where he played?
Yeah, he played at Kossuth. I played with him.
Right here.
But the way that it was told to me, and this might have been thrown out the window due to something or another, is he said it that season, because I was playing in that game. That was against Corinth, my either freshman or sophomore year. And if it was my freshman year, I would have dressed. I wouldn't have played. But
I think it was your freshman because it was 2015.
yes, freshman year, I dressed. I was on the sideline for it, and it was incredible to watch. But the way it was told to us is somebody beat that record not too long after that. And it might have gotten thrown out. So Jaylee may still hold the spot in the record book.
I see 543, and that is the record.
Is that on MHSAA?
It is.
Well, there you go. So Jaylee still holds the record. Shout out Jaylee. Hope you're out there listening. My boy. That was one of my sideline partners my freshman year. Him and Diego Longoria are a kicker.
You were part of that game, and you didn't even know it.
I mean, I knew it, but we had always been told that it got beat not long after
From
that.
what I can find, that's the record, 543.
That's insane. Great. I was a part of that game. That's insane. I mean, a part of it, you can go to the film and you can see number 49 standing on the sidelines looking like a twig, because I think my freshman year I was about I weighed about $160 and thought I was going to play outside linebacker or defensive end, and that didn't happen.
Don't think it would.
No. We killed it in JV that year, though.
Oh, I'm sure you did.
We killed it in JV that year. But shout out to Jaylee. Yeah, that's insane. But, yeah, we thought we were going to get close to that rushing record, and I think we did get close. I think and there's no stats from this game because nobody's updated max preps for some reason. Coaches, update your max preps. But, yeah, we thought he was at halftime he had close to 300 rush yards.
I think Keyshawn Ben, at least, all-purpose yards
was over 5.
Was over mainly because, like you said, they were scared to kick to him.
Yeah. And I think if they would have kicked to him in the second half, he'd have probably broke it.
Oh, I do too. I mean, I could be wrong. I want to say he took 2 to the house on kickoff or punt returns.
He did.
I remember at least one, and I recall
I think he took a pair of kick returns to the crib, and then obviously they threw a deep ball to him for the first score of the game, which we found on Huddle earlier. Hopefully we can find that clip, throw it in for our viewers at home. But I just think that we're going to be treated to the same thing this year. There's going to be a lot of offense, and I cannot wait.
If you like offensive games, a lot of scoring, a lot of yards, tune into this game. It's our game of the week. 7 o'clock.
Going to be live on
At
Max Out
yeah.
Sports.
At Choctaw Central.
Fantastic field, fantastic facility, and some of the best fans in Mississippi. I love going to games at Choctaw Central.
Hospitality
They are
is-
so welcoming, so nice. It's just awesome people.
Hospitality is graded as an A++.
100%.
It's incredible to
Not
go
that
down
Philly last year wasn't. I think Philadelphia has one of the most iconic stadiums in Mississippi.
there. Oh, I agree.
It's right there in the middle of town, and it is down in a pit. It is awesome.
It's a bit terrifying to walk down there.
Yeah.
'Cause I feel like I'm
as
gonna fall.
As a visiting team, imagine coming in there. Imagine
is
coming in there.
neat.
Didn't Deuce McAllister play there?
He might have. There's another guy that played there that is not coming to mind. Oklahoma running back.
Yeah. Adam will know.
Adam won't know.
Adam will know.
We should know this. We do know it. His name just isn't coming to mind.
It is. I got to look it up now.
Played for Oklahoma. Had a couple of years in the NFL. Has a ESPN 30 for 30 on him.
Oh yeah.
Dude could play.
Yeah. I got to. The bad part is, we're gonna think of his name with like a minute left and have to throw it in.
We probably will.
Was it Dupree?
It was Eric Dupree. That's
Eric
exactly
Dupree
who it
played at
was.
Philly. Duh, Tanner. Duh. Imagine going to Philadelphia, playing in that stadium, and knowing that Eric Dupree is lined up on the other side. I don't think Deuce McAllister went there, by the way.
I say we put Eric Dupree and Keyshawn Ben head to head.
Eric Dupree's winning. I love Keyshawn.
Even at this age?
Well, probably. This is Eric Dupree we're talking about, but we'll see. But yeah, imagine having to go there and play against Eric Dupree.
No,
That's like the clips I always see of like, imagine getting out of math class for your little school in Alabama and looking at the schedule and seeing you have to play Derrick Henry that week.
pass.
I think I just quit.
That's
I just go
when
home.
I hang the cleats up.
I just go home. I played football against one or two Division I athletes, and Cole Smith of Pontotoc High School was one that I remember playing against, and he played left tackle for them. And if you just tried to hit him once, you could tell the difference between who's going to be a Power 5 athlete and who's going to go host a podcast about Power 5 athletes one day. That was me. I got buried every play. Shout out Cole Smith. But yeah, it's different. And I couldn't imagine playing someone like Derrick Henry or Eric Dupree.
Hang the cleats up. If
Hang 'em up.
you want to live, hang the cleats up.
Hang them up. But into the predictions, who do you got?
I think I've got to go Choctaw Central again.
Yeah?
I think both. I mean, you look at both of these guys.
I mean, Philly won this one last year.
I'm pretty sure Choctaw Central did.
No.
Was it Philly?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I still
Yes.
have Choctaw Central on this one.
Yeah.
But-
Philly put up 70 in this one last year.
I've got to take Choctaw Central.
Because Philly, I'm going to take Philly in this one. I think Keyshawn Ben is one of the most fun players to watch in the state, bar none. But I think Philadelphia has such a deep stable that it's not going to make much of a difference.
I think nonetheless, whoever wins, it's going to be a fun matchup with a lot of offense and a lot of total yards.
Oh, there's going to be so many points scored. We say that, and we're going to get there, and it's going to be a slugfest.
And if it is, so be it.
So be it.
Because I still think you're going to see a lot of action from those guys. But we never know till we get there. Something can always change. It's always fun to see. Last year, it was a lot of fun to see these twos. We're hoping that same thing happens this year as well.
Yeah, and with Philly, they did not have a good record last year. Again, because they found it hard at times to do the tackling thing. They did score a lot, and I think they've returned enough to do that again. So I've got Philly. I think that they will yet again be electric on offense. I think they will yet again sometimes struggle on the defensive side, especially when it comes to in the trenches. And for those reasons, I think we are going to get an offensive shootout. And if Keyshawn Ben has got some help this year, this one might be a lot closer.
Might be a lot closer, and it's also his senior year.
It is that. He's got to go out on a high note. Got to go out on a high note. Obviously, Philadelphia, again, is still searching for that first win. Choctaw Central 2-0. Do you think that changes it at all?
I think everyone wants to get their first win, so it's got to play a little bit of a factor.
That's fair. That's about all the time we've got here. As always, thanks for joining. This has been a wonderful episode. We'll catch you next time here on the Magnolia Fields podcast.